What's up? I'm Angie, and you are listening to Podcast That Pays, the podcast for online business owners who want to grow their business and sell their offers using podcasting. If you like no fluff, tell it like it is advice from a marketing-loving podcast agency owner, you are in the right place. So glad you're here. Let's dive in. Oh, hey, you're here. The mission episode. This is what I teach my clients to do in their first episode, and I'm following the exact framework I teach. So here we are. This episode is all about getting you, the listener, hooked into my mission, like so hooked. You'll think, why haven't I found Angie yet? Why haven't I hired Angie yet? Why haven't I started my podcast yet? Or I will make you want to start a podcast even if you have never thought of it. So keep that in mind as we go through this episode, and then you can let me know how I did at the end. If I have won you over. That is the goal of this episode, is exactly what I teach my clients to do in their podcast. So here we go. Now, have you ever seen, I think we've all seen this, where this person is excited, they're talking all about their podcast, they're talking about how they're launching, they have this beautiful new cover art, they do this launch, whole launch thing, they have a launch squad, and they make a big rah-rah fuss about it, and then a few months later, you notice, or maybe you don't even notice, but now that I'm bringing it up, maybe you notice that they just kind of fizzle out. Or maybe this was you who fizzled out, right? So we know and we have seen, and most of the time, and this is really ironic, that the way that we know that they haven't been posting, and this is true on social media as well, is they always come back and they say, I'm back. I took a break. I'm back. And we didn't even know you left, girl. Like, we didn't know. We don't need an explanation. We're not checking for you that closely, okay? Just FYI, PSA, people not checking for you that close. But we've seen it happen before. We've seen people get really excited about a podcast, and then they just fade away. That's called a pod fade, by the way. And about 75% of podcasts end up in pod fades. And I literally am here to rid the world of pod fades. This is my personal mission, but we'll talk more about that. So you see these podcasts, they're very inconsistent, and I see it happen a lot. I see people come to me and they hire me on their second and even third times on podcasting where they've quit, they give up, they can't be consistent, all of that, okay? And why is that? Why does this happen? So this is why I teach the way that I do. This is why this podcast is called Podcast That Pays, right? Because one of the biggest reasons why people quit is very intuitive. It makes a lot of sense. Like, I would quit too. It's because people don't see a return on their investment. And we've been so conditioned in this day and age. We're so conditioned to get a quick return. We're so conditioned to get something instantly for what we're doing. And a lot of people will say okay, we know podcasting is the long game, which is true. However, it doesn't have to be just the long game. You can get results in the short game. Okay, so we love our coins. I love my coins, and I want to be able to teach you how to make your coins right away. And this is what we need to see as business owners, because this is like an aside, going off on a tangent, but this is why hiring people who are podcast producers, but who are not business owners or familiar with your type of business or understand how to market your business on a podcast, This is why they miss the mark a lot of times for specifically business owners who probably have a smaller audience and they need a lot more marketing help and insight and know-how than just audio editing and like flow of episode and things like that, right? So this is what a lot of people are missing is marketing. And in the last couple of years, I've become absolutely obsessed with this. Okay. I'm obsessed with this. Hey, if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, I really need to up my podcasting game, or you want to start utilizing your show more for your business to get more leads and sell more offers, then I want you to come over to podcastthatpays.com and check out the Podcast Collab Lab. That's podcastthatpays.com and check out what we're doing over there. I would love you to join us. Okay, back to the show. So, how did this happen? Where did this even come from? Well, a few years ago, I think, I don't know now, 4 or 5 years ago, I started my first podcast. And, maybe you know me, maybe you've heard of me before, and maybe you're in one of my communities, or maybe you're already one of my clients. But if you didn't know, I used to be a life coach. So I've been in the online space for quite some time and in the marketing space for quite some time. But I was a life coach, and I started my first podcast for my life coaching business. And in fact, I started my podcast and I got my very first life coaching client from my podcast, someone who binged my entire podcast and reached out to me and hired me. And I was floored. I couldn't believe that had happened. And I couldn't believe that I was getting so many DMs and so many messages about how impactful what I was talking about was for them, or how they were making these big life changes and choices because of the shit that I said. And it just, I couldn't believe the response I was getting. That very first season of my podcast, I made over $13,000 in a matter of, I think, 5 months as a brand new coach, brand new. And it was all directly from my podcast. And it was just a simple podcast funnel, which was, come meet me on my Instagram. Tell me what you think. I'm a big come meet me on my Instagram person. So you come meet me on my Instagram after this episode, because I like to hang out. But come meet me on my Instagram, tell me what you think. And then I would close sales in my DMs. And so that's an example of a really simple fucking funnel that it doesn't have to be intricate. So when I use the word funnel and I talk about podcast funnel, that's all that could mean if for you, like something that simple. And I close that amount of sales with, in a shorter amount of time, being a brand new coach with a really small audience, a really, really, really small audience. Okay. And what was deeper than that, even deeper than how much money I made, was the impact I was having. And I started looking around, all around me, to the right, left, all around. There was these amazing, brilliant women who were in my circles, right? And I was just like, wow, she needs a podcast. She needs a podcast. She needs a podcast. Because if I could make little old me, brand new to life coaching, Angie, could create the impact that I was making, all of these people, I felt, needed to share their message so that they can make a bigger impact too through podcasting. Because believe it or not, podcasting is super intimate. It's so intimate, and it is strange for us to think about in that way because it is a one-sided thing. Like, I'm laying here recording this podcast from my bed, and who knows when you're listening to it, what you're doing. You might be picking up dog shit. That's what I do when I listen to podcasts. And so you might be outside walking your dog, picking up shit. And I don't know why it's so intimate, but it's so intimate. It creates this like closeness, and people are intentionally coming and listening, and they listen to most of your episode when they land on it. And it's such a beautiful platform for connection. It's so beautiful for connection. So I started thinking, and of course, as I started talking about my podcast journey, I got in the top 10% of podcasts. And, people started asking me, Angie, how are you getting these results? What's going on? Like, how can you, can you teach us how to do this? And it took me 6 months to a year to finally agree. And I'm a generator in my human design, which means I'm supposed to respond, right? And so whatever that means, to me, I take it that this is an example of what this means. It took me 6 months to a year to respond to that calling of I was supposed to teach people and help people with their podcasts. Okay. So it took a long time before I finally transitioned into it. And I remember talking with my coach, Sarah Dan, was one of the most impactful coaches that I've had in my life. And Sarah Dan, I just remember I would tell her over and over, I want to help powerhouse women. I want to talk to powerhouse women with big polarizing messages. And I want to help them get it out there into the world and make an impact. I want to be like, I'm the rock. I'm the catalyst, the rock. And I'm going to, throw all these women out there in the podcast waters, and we're going to create all of these ripples, and we're going to change the world, right? This is how I felt and feel about podcasting. And a lot of people don't know that's how I started or even my reasons behind it. So I figured that I would share it, right? So I'm here to expand my reach, but not only to expand my reach, but to help you expand your reach, expand your impact. So, why podcasting? Why is this essential for your business? Why is this something that you shouldn't be putting off? Podcasting is, number one, an evergreen platform. This is never going to die. This episode that you're listening to does not die unless I kill it, unless I physically take it down. You would be surprised at the number of clients who I have who have had those podcasts, who are pod fates, and maybe they haven't even recorded in years. It's been years since they recorded, and still they have hundreds of downloads a month from people finding their podcast and going to their podcast, and they're not doing anything because it never dies. It's evergreen. One of my best performing private podcasts is called Goodbye Social Media, Hello Podcast. And why do you think that is? It's because people are tired of the grind. People are tired of the grind. And at some point, I love social media. I love connecting on social media. But at some point, you have to have content in your business that lives on and on and on, that works for you. It's kind of like putting your money to work for you. You need to put your content to work for you in a way that's going to outlive the length of a social media post. Social media is great. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy for you. Once you build a community, you can always sell and dip into it, and it's great. But it's this evergreen, sustainable content that is going to help you scale and grow and not trade, time for dollars. Okay. So why podcasting for your business? Why now? Is you need evergreen. You need evergreen. And now more than ever, social media is becoming more and more competitive. Even running ads is more and more competitive. You need some organic, evergreen content where people can come to you intentionally. They're searching for you and they can find what they're looking for, right? Where you're not just trying to, cut through the noise on social media, trying to get people's attention, but people are intentionally seeking you out. You need content like that. Podcast, blog, even YouTube, Pinterest, whatever. Those are all search engines that I was naming. But you need that kind of content. The other reason and the other thing that podcast is so valuable for is connection, is community, is like building credibility and authority in your brand. It does all of that instantly when you have a podcast. That automatically happens for you. And if you want to, if you go into this adopting this philosophy, this idea that you can have this podcast that pays, that works for your business, this content that's evergreen, that's always working for you, this funnel, this system that will consistently bring you in leads in your business without you having to show up every single day for it. You figure out your way to be consistent in it. You figure out how to make it work for your business. You figure out how to align all your new season launches with your offer launches. Like, you figure out how to make this really work for your business. It can really be the thing that streamlines your entire content marketing system, and everything can be anchored. Your podcast gets to be the anchor of all of that. And it actually simplifies everything you do versus adding on one more thing to your plate. Because we ain't got time for that. Like, who has time to add one more thing to their plate? Like, we don't. As business owners, we're busy. We don't want to do that. And that's the second reason why people fade out and can't be consistent, is because they get out of their mind, outside of their body, and they decide that, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, but I want to talk about all the shit that I don't currently talk about to market my business, because this seems fun and this is my chance to just be me. So you know what? I teach podcasting, but I want to talk about like astrology because I'm really interested in it. So I'm going to talk about astrology in my podcast because it just sounds fun. And that's cool. But don't be surprised when the ROI, when the return on your investment of your time, of your podcast producing and all of that doesn't like return. Like, when the math ain't mathing, don't be surprised. Don't be sitting around waiting to like skyrocket to fame when you have a really small audience. You're just talking about your like hobbies. You put no purpose and intention behind your podcast or your episodes. There's not really a goal. People don't even know what to do from it. They're just listening to it because you have no intention other than just sharing, what you like. And that's okay. If that's what you really, truly want. I ask my clients all the time, what do you want? Like, what is it that you truly want from your launch? Like, do you want to be in the top 10 podcasts? Do you care about that? Is that the most important driver? Because if it is, I can guide you in that direction. If it's not, and your most important driver is conversions and to sell your offer, I can also teach you that part. But it's about being honest. It's about knowing, hey, if I'm going to get in the top 10%, you know what? Maybe I need to take a month before my podcast launches and do some serious audience building, because this is how you're going to get there. And this is your expectation. If you know that you have a small audience, you can launch, but like, you're not going to get in the top 10. You're not going to rank up high. Like, and you just need to have those expectations and temper your expectations for what it is that you're doing. So if you listen to this podcast, adapt these strategies, put these strategies to work, because I'm going to share with you the strategies that it takes to create a podcast that's going to pay you, where people are going to buy your offers from you. And let me tell you, I'm not talking about just selling into a $27 membership. I'm not talking about a $97 mini course. I'm talking about masterminds. I'm talking about your high-level offer. I'm talking about your, services, your one-on-one services. That's what I'm talking about. That's what people can be buying from you. And if you don't think that that is possible, then you are wrong. Like, straight up wrong. You're straight up wrong. Because I've seen it happen. I've done it. I know that it exists. This is a potent, powerful platform that will warm your people up like no other. Like no other. And people will be excited to work with you. But you got to sell it to them, and you have to guide them on this journey. And that's exactly what I'm here to teach you. And that's exactly what you are going to learn. And then we're going to take over the world. And we're going to take over the world with these amazing messages and this impact that we're going to make and this ripple effect and all of these like amazing, phenomenal women podcasters out here getting their voice out, building their brand, being amazing. We're going to do that. And we're going to have big impact. And then we're also going to get paid from this in multiple ways. Okay. I'm mostly speaking about your offers, but we also, we can touch on other creative ways, affiliate marketing, sponsorships, all of that, or how having a podcast helps you get PR, helps you get speaking engagements, like puts you in rooms that you may not be in if you didn't have a podcast. That's what podcasting does. That's what it's all about. And I love this platform. I love that I get to do this as my work day in and day out. 70 clients. I just love it. I love it so much. So my hope for you is that you will love it as much as I do. My hope for you is that you will not fall into the trap of not setting your podcast up to pay you and to work for you and your business and to streamline your business. That's my hope. I want you to look at podcasting differently. I want you to look at it as something that's fun, that gets to be a part of what you do, that feels good, that makes impact, and that gets you some results. That's what I want. So I'm so glad that you're here listening. And if you loved this, I would love if you share it with a friend. I would love if you came over to Instagram at Angie M. Jordan and, tell me all about what you learned, or just say hey to me. I love that too. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, head over to podcastthatpays.com to get started on your way to creating a podcast that pays. And don't forget to follow this show and take a screenshot that you were listening and tag me on Instagram at Angie M. Jordan. I'd love to meet you and show you some love over there. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. Let's get this money.